So, should you try and use a Spotify playlist or a wedding DJ? We get this question a lot, people considering, oh, I don't know if I've got the budget for a wedding DJ. Maybe I could just do it myself. Maybe I should just, make a Spotify playlist. I've got some good tunes on Spotify. I reckon my music's pretty good. Well, hopefully this video will shed a bit of light on the pros and cons of both, the differences, and the considerations that you may or may not have had when making this decision. So first of all, cost. Cost is obviously the big one. Cost is probably the main and only reason why you would want to go for a Spotify playlist over booking a wedding DJ. It's obviously cheaper to organize it yourself, to do it yourself, and it's free to make a Spotify playlist apart from the small monthly fee that you might already be paying. DJs, obviously you're going to have to pay for that, but you're obviously paying for a service. So I can, in this video, break down a few of those differences so that you can have a bit of a think about whether or not you actually will go with the Spotify playlist or the DJ. Another consideration is control over the songs or control over the music. Maybe you're a little bit of a control freak and you want to make sure that the music's perfect. You know that you have a good taste in music and you have a killer playlist of songs that you want to hear. That's one other reason perhaps, and absolutely you could list every single song in order from start to finish, which you would hope to play at your wedding. That is a possibility. You can also, however, give that list to a DJ, and the DJ can pick from that the best songs that will work at certain times and play them accordingly. Guest requests is something that you may be considering and thinking, oh, how can I incorporate my guest requests into my Spotify playlist? And you could spend the time, yes, doing a bit of an email or a text out saying, send me your top two or three songs and I'll put them in and you can find out where they go. But realistically, knowing when to put that request in or knowing when to not play that request is the skill that the DJs are doing on, multiple times a week, and that's what you're paying for, that service. So they know when they get a guest request, they'll go, yep, awesome, I can play that song, and they'll write it down. They might go, I'm going to play that song in an hour or two, when it's going to work a little bit better than perhaps when initially they have requested it. That's something that you can't do whilst you're enjoying your wedding, rather than worrying about the music on a Spotify playlist. One of the biggest considerations that you may or may not have thought of is guests changing the music halfway through a song, if you give them access to your Spotify playlist. So say you've got a playlist up here, and or even just an iPod, and they can plug it in, or they can plug their own phone in. Great idea in theory, but usually once people want to dance and differences in opinion arise, you end up getting guests that they'll kill the song halfway through because they think, oh, this is average, this is not a good song, I'm going to play what I think is better. So they might cut a song which actually might be doing okay, or someone might be enjoying, halfway through the track, and that can really impact the night. They won't be able to seamlessly transition. It'll be a sudden stop in the song, and then a second or two of silence, and then a new tune, and that can be pretty detrimental to the dance floor. Also, that guest's song choices might be a bit hit and miss. They may not actually be that good, even though they might think it's great. It's not always the best song choice, and usually the loudest and most obnoxious guest will end up getting their way, not necessarily the guest with the best music taste or the guest who knows what song to play next. It'll be the drunkest, it'll be the one who's the most forceful, says, no, I know what's going to play, and then they'll play that, and you'll basically just listen to their requests whilst they're on the dance floor, because they're so forthright with it, and they might be intoxicated, they might not be, but that's usually who's going to depict your music. So think about who your loudest and most obnoxious guest is, and that will most likely be, or who the most likely to change your music on you is. That's probably whose music you're going to end up listening to if you do go with a Spotify playlist as opposed to a professional. It can also create a little bit of conflict between guests. If a guest changes songs, they might say, why'd you do that for? Oh, that's a terrible song. No, it's not, it's a great song. And it just invites a bit of conflict in, whereas the DJ is a bit more versed in handling those situations. And if there's any conflict, it's not directed in between your guests, which you don't want. You don't want to be creating tension between guests. It's meant to be a fun day. It's meant to be full of love, full of laughter. Dancing. Think about dancing. Dancing is it might be important, or it might not be important to you. Maybe you're just having a chill dinner and you don't really care if people dance or not. That's not the focus. That would be, if dancing isn't important to you, then that would be a plus or more okay to go with a playlist or a Spotify playlist. If dancing is important to you though, then I would highly recommend booking a professional, because of a few of those reasons I've mentioned before, with the guests changing music, and also a few reasons that I'll mention in a second. But dancing, if that's important to you, you really got to think about what songs are playing when and in the right order and how they're mixed together, because that's what keeps the dance floor flow going. And a Spotify playlist just is a lot harder to do that, particularly if you're listening to a song in its entirety rather. The last 10 or 15 seconds of a song is usually when you blend into the next and mix into another song, and that 15 or 20 seconds plus the 15 or 20 seconds intro of the next track ends up with 40 seconds of music that you don't really want to listen to, and it's better blended. But instead you just hear the intro and the outro of a track, and it's not particularly exciting, and it creates this lull. So dancing is usually not quite as encouraged during those moments. Let's talk a bit about professional music choice versus your music choice as well. Now, you know your own music taste better than anyone else does, correct? Do you know the music taste of your group of friends? Maybe your immediate friends, but on the whole, if you're trying to create a vibe for the entirety of your guests, say you've got 50, 100 people there, maybe less, I guarantee you won't have as much knowledge about what will work best as someone like a wedding DJ who does this 2 or 3 times a week, who knows and sees and plays music for large groups of people on a bi-weekly basis. It doesn't matter how good you think your music choice is. These DJs have tried and tested way more songs than you ever would to a large audience. They know what has worked, they know what hasn't worked, and they know what to avoid and what to play. That's something that I guarantee you won't have as good of a knowledge as a DJ with when you're making your Spotify playlists. These artists, they're at events every week, and you're not. Or if you are, then perhaps maybe you are a wedding DJ, but I would imagine if you are a wedding DJ, you're probably not watching this video. You're probably, you wouldn't be deciding whether or not to use a Spotify playlist or a DJ, because you'll know that a DJ would be the wiser choice. Your music is never going to make everyone happy either. It's a DJ's job to balance, or rather, like any music, I should reiterate and say that every single song is not going to make everyone happy. It's the DJ's job to find that balance between making as many people happy as possible whilst playing as many of your requests as possible. And they're not, usually the two don't always overlap. Most, and some will, but sometimes they won't. And it's the DJ's job to say, I know that song will work, and I know that song won't work, or I know that song will work here, or I know that song won't work here. And that leads me into the next point to think about, and that is the song order, or the order of the songs the order in which your songs will play on the night. It doesn't matter how many times you move a song up here or down here on your playlist in preparation, thinking I'm going to plan the perfect thing. Things pop up on the night. They always do. Something pushes back by 10 minutes, you pull the speeches forward because you realize that the cake's running late, or this is happening, or someone needs to go to the bathroom, and there's just no way you're going to get the order right. So you really need someone there, even if it is a playlist, just to know, when am I going to push pause on this part, or when are we going to pause that particular playlist and play the next playlist when we move into the next one. That is something that you pay for in a wedding DJ, and it's something that you would have to personally manage on the night, and that can be rather time consuming. There's nothing worse than that cringe moment when you've picked an amazing background dinner tune, maybe like a soul 60s track or something, but it's not an overly dancey track, and it accidentally pops up mid dance floor, in between some house music, which have got a whole bunch of late 20s, early 30-year-olds on the dance floor just enjoying themselves, and then it cuts to a completely different vibe out of nowhere because the order isn't perfect. That's something that you just can't do or manage yourself without being there the whole time. Okay, formalities. Let's talk about that as well. So obviously you will have a few formalities at your wedding. Some people will have more than others. You might have less, you might have more. You might be going for a more formal wedding, you might be going for a more chill cocktail style wedding. But there's usually some things going on, whether that's a speech, whether that's an entrance, whether that's a first dance. All that stuff needs to be managed with a song at the right time. So the question is, who's going to do that? Is it going to be you? You'd hope not. Is it going to be a friend? Is it going to be a family member? That's a burden that you have to place on someone who doesn't do this professionally to get that right. And if they, say maybe their phone receives a call during one of your formalities. Maybe they accidentally hit play on the wrong song and then there's 2 seconds of silence. Maybe they push play just a little bit late. All these things can create an embarrassing moment, and when you've spent thousands of dollars on your wedding day, you really don't want to leave that stuff up to chance. It's just too much of a risk to ruin some of those most important moments of your life. So that's another consideration to have. Sound quality as well. Most venues, even if they say they have their own speakers, most venues will only have speakers that are adequate for background music. So if you, again, want to come back to that dancing point, if you want to have dancing at your wedding, you have to have good quality speakers. And when you book a DJ, they will come with that. So you can either, what your choices are if you're going the Spotify playlist route. You can go and book some speakers, usually for $100 or $200 for the night, and you'll get some good quality speakers from a hire company, which is great. Or if you want them to set it up, that's great. You're probably spending $300 or $400, including the setup and the pack down, and you're pushing into more of the price, getting closer to the DJ. So you're really not saving as much money as you first thought that you were. Then comes the added risk of worrying that the speakers are, going to be looked after on the night. No one's going to knock them over because they're drunk. So it's another piece of equipment that you are personally responsible for. And then also the added time of having to pick up the speakers, drop them off on the day, pick them up the next day as well. So you're talking about a couple, maybe 2 or 3 hours of your time as well. All this stuff does start to add up, and it may be considerations that you haven't thought of. And if you're hoping to plug into the venue speakers, that could be fine if you're only having a dinner and you don't need dancing, but I guarantee you that probably about 90% of venues do not have speakers that are danceable or adequate for dancing. Okay, the next point. Or rather, it's kind of a point that I've been interweaving into some of the other points, and that is your time on the night. This is supposed to be, the best day of your life. You don't want to be spending your time worrying about what song is playing next, in what order, why a certain song isn't playing over another. So you really need to you really want to make sure that you really understand the full-time commitment that is involved in organizing your own music and playing stuff at the right time. Also with the speaker hire, things like that, making sure the formalities all work out, all this stuff, it's one person's job really, and unless you're only requiring background music in the background and have no intention of having any specific songs for formalities or anything, and really you're just having a dinner, then there's really no reason why you wouldn't consider quite seriously booking a professional to look after your entertainment. So I suppose, summing all that up, the question, can you use a Spotify as your DJ? Yes, you absolutely can, but do consider that there's a range of multitude of things that you will be personally responsible for that could go wrong, that usually you pay a professional to organize. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a link here on how to create a Spotify playlist for your wedding. We'll put the link in the blog below, so you can have a bit of a look at that, because it's definitely possible. Nice, it's not overly difficult. Spotify is a great program and has many functions. But in summary, so that if you go with the Spotify, the pros are it's obviously going to be cheaper. You have complete control over your music. The cons are going to be that your guests can change the music halfway through, and your time on the night and the stress in the lead up around specific formalities on the night. If you go with the DJ option, the pros are you get a more professional experience. You get someone who does this 2 or 3 times a week. The song choice is going to be better overall for the entirety of the guests. You're probably going to have more people dancing, and also the time and stress. You don't have to worry about it. So you can actually enjoy the moments with your friends, which is the whole point of the day. The cons of getting a DJ are the cost, and also you might be a little bit worried that, is this DJ going to be good? I've never seen them before. I've never met them before. Are they actually going to be any good? But the key to that is just do some research. Make sure you choose a company that you trust. Make sure you find someone with photos, with videos, or a bio, or some mixes, stuff that you can listen to. You might even be able to have a phone call with the DJ beforehand, just to make sure that you're getting a professional who knows what they're doing. So I hope that sheds a bit of light on the question of whether or not you should have a Spotify playlist or a DJ for your wedding, and we'll see you soon for another question.